I'm with Meghan McCain, everybody. Thank you for coming through.
I'm with Bridget. I'm so sorry. I had to reschedule this once before because I was starting a new show and the time you wanted to record was like right before I was starting. So I apologize. I never do that. And I am sorry in advance. I really hate rescheduling on people because I have guests on my shows and it's really annoying when people have to reschedule. So I'm sorry.
I find that most people in the space are actually really professional. When you book something, there's a couple that are not and have flaked enough times that I'll never book with them ever again, but that is very much the rarity. That's not
You're
and
like
I
them
don't
and
even care because weirdly I knew I was wondering how that would play out. I saw you like announcing that you had the show coming and I knew you had booked with me before that show was a thing. So I was wondering, I'm like, I have a feeling she's going to have to reschedule. So don't worry about it. You owe me no
thank
apologies.
you. Thank you. I still don't like doing that. It's rude.
I know. What tell us about your new show?
It's the company called Two Way, which I'm excited about that Mark Halperin started. And it's basically like a live interactive YouTube show. And it's live on YouTube at 5 o'clock on Mondays and Wednesdays. And I'm going to be honest, like YouTube is like not traditionally my space. I was telling you offline, my audience is like overwhelmingly like 85 to 90% female and YouTube is heavily male. So I'm going to wait and see how it turns out. But I don't know about you. Like, I'm at this stage in my career where I only want to work with cool people I like and think are intelligent and are respectful. And the people at 2A like checked all those boxes. And I know you've been on Mark Halperin's show, and there's an intersection stuff with you doing working there too.
I hope I get to work there. I love the show. You know what I liked about it? I loved being able to see the chat and also being on the show at the same time, but hearing from people. And now I've done, I think, 2 episodes, and both times I came away thinking about something that I hadn't considered before or hearing a different perspective a lot. Even in the last one I did, I remember everybody in the chat was talking about how they were worried that their favorite independent podcasters were now captured in the same way they felt left-wing media was. And it was like a whole side conversation happening in the chat that I was watching while Mark was interviewing one of the other people on there. And I thought that was really interesting and an important perspective for me to see, because we do get trapped in these little bubbles and often don't even realize it. So seeing all these people saying that they were worried the same thing was happening to independent media that happened to mainstream media, I was like, oh, I can see that. I can see how that would be a fear.
Are you
What's
worried about that at all? I mean, you're
I
kind of independent media. I mean, you're a huge name, but you're still you don't work for corporate media.
Yeah, everything is so fractured now. So I worry I worry that there's a lot of things that have concerned me, even just being in independent media and seeing the way there's so many things. It's like 10 things are happening in my brain at once right now. I think audience capture is real and we all have to be aware of it. And if you're not aware of it, it will happen to you without you being aware of it. And I would be horrified if I had in my mentions a lot of people, saying things like, "Oh, yay, Bridget's finally noticing." Like
Yes.
they are in charge of everything. If I started seeing that, I'd be like, "Whoa, I need to uh not I would just take a step back and consider the audience that I might be cultivating." Because it's really tough. And again, on the other hand, I have this other thing that happens with people who came from the left where it's almost like this default, but the right. Like it's a knee jerk reaction. You probably experienced this growing up where it's like, well, I'm going to criticize the left, but the right. And
Mhm.
it's almost like a tick, like a, like, and I've had to see that in myself where the left can be mutilating children, and they can be going as far, burning down Teslas, doing pretty much whatever they want, and people will have to qualify it with "but the right," no matter how far the left goes. And you can go pretty far left in America and suffer absolutely no consequences for it. And the minute you go an inch to the right, it's suddenly too much, and even the center left will kind of run left again. And
And you
so
get,
that's
like, you're not invited to any cool party. You can't go on any cool show. You can't you do get blacklisted, like, in a way. Like, it's like you don't get like, I've, like, done the line of both because I used to work in corporate media and now I don't. And like, if you are even a little bit conservative, especially in like a post-Trump era, or even not conservative, like you just like have perspectives that aren't totally ideologically progressive, like that's still very real. And my fear is like if Trump isn't in power or whatever the next president isn't Republican, like I think the anger and rage towards people who didn't bend the knee to progressives is going to be like a tsunami. I think like if the left ever gets in power again, I think they're going to like want redemption from, quite frankly, people like you and me first, which is really
yeah.
sad.
And that's unsettling. And this thing that's kind of happening right now, the fracturing in our media, there's been one of the things that pushed me to the right was the unsettling amount of anti-Semitism I was seeing coming out of the left, coming out of institutions on the left, and kind of cloaked in intellectualism. And then I see everybody worrying about it on the right. It's a real fear, but I don't know that it's a real, like, how is this somehow worse than what we've seen on the left, where it is literally in our institutions? But again, that knee-jerk reaction is like, oh, we see a little bit of this, we better but the right. And nobody's ever saying but the left. You will not hear that. You won't say, the right has a problem. Well, the right might have this like burgeoning problem with some Nazis who really have no power whatsoever, but the left, you don't hear that. It's like the ideology is always to kind of excuse what's ever happening on the left and to worry more about what's going on the right, and it doesn't feel balanced. So I think the overcorrection that happened in our media was to that reaction of calling everybody a Nazi, of labeling anybody who, I mean, they were labeling moms who were talking in we were talking about this today, because Trump came out and he was saying, I'm going to, maybe I'll label these people domestic terrorists who are like throwing Molotov cocktails at Tesla shops and whatever. And everybody's like, oh, and I guess now if we protest, you get labeled a domestic terrorist on MSNBC. And it's like, you guys, you labeled moms who are pushing back against men and women's bathrooms domestic terrorists.
And who didn't want to vaccinate their kids with the
Who
COVID
didn't want to
vaccine.
vaccinate their kids?
Yeah.
I don't
But I
want to
also,
hear it.
like, one of the things that's been interesting for me, because obviously I'm like a lifelong Republican, is I was actually just thinking about this morning. Like, remember when Binders Full of Women with Mitt Romney was like the greatest defense, and he was called a Nazi. And I remember this when my dad was running for president. Congressman John Lewis, may he rest in peace. He was an icon in his own right in the civil rights movement. But he compared my dad to David Duke and the head of the Ku Klux Klan for daring to just run for president against the first Black nominee for president, or yeah, the Democratic nominee for president. And my husband said this when I first met him. Sometimes when you cry wolf enough, the beast does show up. And I think it just stopped being effective. I get called
Mhm.
horrific things all the time, and I'm like, okay, I'm a Nazi because I don't want biological men competing against my daughters in sports. Okay, like that's a ridiculous thing to say, but I think part of the toothlessness of the left right now is that they've just been so histrionic for so long about things that were small, when sometimes there are things that are big that we should all justifiably call out, anti-Semitism in any form, obviously, but they just don't care about it on their side.
No.
So when they're calling it out on the other side, that's why I think it carries less ammo.
It's interesting to me I mean, I've wondered what it's been like for you in the culture wars, because you've had such a front seat to all of it your entire life. How has that shaped and I mean, you've been very open about your almost like personal vendetta against rightfully Trump. And how have you managed that as someone who has, I think, a lot more inside information, and just being someone who's been battered by it and taken, like, people taking shots at you for since you were a kid?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because I feel like I have like the most intense, like, you can really say almost anything to me and I don't care. Like, people have there's a pretty famous parody of me by a comedian named Tim Dillon, who I think may or may not be your friend, which is like the most unflattering portrayal of me ever done. It's like I'm obese and screaming, and I think there's something about how I want to like have sexual relations with my parents. Like, it's pretty disgusting. And I remember when it first came out, just like being so confused. Like, is this how people see me? Like, this is like how the world sees me. And then Saturday Night Live did an equally unflattering portrayal of me with Adie Bryant, of all things. We went to the same high school, and I always just thought it was weird to like be parodied by someone that like came from the exact same place that I did, but whatever.
Mm,
So I think for me, it's like I've experienced so much that's so ugly and gross. And when this goes up, like on your YouTube, people will just be like, she's a fat, disgusting cunt. She's a fat, disgusting cunt. Like, that's what I'm told every day since I was basically like 22. So it just doesn't really like impact me the same way. But when it comes to like the political culture part of it, it's been so uncool to be a Republican forever. Basically up until this last year and a half, 2 year, maybe like 2 years into COVID, a year and a half into COVID, when people started realizing how draconian the left can be. And I've really been enjoying having a long history publicly of not being on the side of the other side of like censorship and hysteria. And I just find like a lot of people on the left to be really disconnected from reality and like represent the HR department. And like, I don't really like, I have liberal friends who I love dearly, but like, I don't want to go socialize with like a group of Democrats if I had the option to, just because I find them like the last time I hung out with a Democrat, the term safe space was used to me. And I was like, I just can't do this. Like, I can't
yeah.
do this. And Trump has really made him and the culture war that like preceded him. It's been fascinating for me to be on the cool kid side for the first time in my entire life.
Yeah, that's been very surprising to me as someone who grew up in the night. I don't ever remember a time in history when the Republicans were cool or the right wing was cool culturally in the way, they've had power here and there, but w what what do you think that shift means just moving forward? Do you think it holds?
I mean, I think that's like the $64,000 question.
Mm,
I think as long as Democrats keep acting insane, even just like John Fetterman voting for this bill to keep, there's a bill presented to keep biological men out of women's locker rooms and women's sports. Like, he voted against it. And it's like, as long as you're just so far off on culture war issues, and you think that, like, I thought the most effective, impactful political ad, maybe of like the past 10 years, was Trump's saying Vice President Harris is for they, them, I'm for you. I just think as long as they keep taking that side, I think we will continue to be on the cool side. That being said, my big like red flag is if the economy tanks and these tariff wars end up being disastrous. I don't think anything else will matter in the same way. And I'm getting a little nervous right now. Like, I just am. Like, I don't know about you, but like even like aluminum tariffs make me uncomfortable.
yeah, I was thinking about this and joking about this on Dumpster Fire today, where I was like, normie Americans don't really care about the culture war stuff. They don't care who likes or hates Teslas when their retirement portfolio is tanking. They just don't. That will be
Mhm.
the thing they care about the most. And there were so many weather vane voters in this last election, myself included, someone who voted for Hillary in 2016 and nobody in 2020 and Trump in 2024. That there's a lot of those people and they'll just swing back. I mean, I could probably never bring myself to vote for Gavin Newsom, but then again, I said that about Trump, so who knows what future Bridget will do?
Did
Certainly
you get
not
a lot of
me.
backlash when you announced you were voting for him? I
I
remember when you
mean,
did.
yeah, I
I
did,
wasn't surprised, no offense. Like, I follow your work, and I was like, I
yeah,
don't think it should be that shocking to people that she decided to vote for Trump.
it wasn't it was it yeah, I mean, I've joked, like, future Bridget the past Bridget would have been like, "Wow, future Bridget loses her mind,"
Oh my god.
um, if I had told her, but I did get a lot of backlash but a lot of people were like, oh, we never, the usual kind of suspects were like, oh, this is the least surprising thing. This person who's, said that they were in the center actually is voting for Trump. And I still don't identify with the conservative party a lot of the time. A
Mhm.
lot of the time. And I certainly don't identify with whatever the left wing party has become either. And just because I voted for Trump and made a decision doesn't I've never been full MAGA. I'm just not it there's a
Neither am
lot.
I.
Yeah.
For what it's worth.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break to talk about our partner.
You've all heard me screaming women for years now, and I'm a big advocate for women in general and women's health in particular. That's why I love Quest's line of medical tests specifically focused on women's health issues. They offer a basic women's health profile test that gives you a snapshot of your current health and wellness, women's hormone tests designed to identify imbalances associated with various health conditions, and specific tests for fertility, thyroid function, and even your menopause stage. You can take a perimenopausal test to help you determine if you're entering perimenopause, an early menopausal panel, and a postmenopause panel. I know you'll see Instagram jokes like, oh, if you know the lyrics to this song, you might be in perimenopause. And you'll laugh and go, haha, I probably am in perimenopause. But are you? You want the actual data. This is all such important knowledge for women to have because it can affect the way you work out. It can affect what you should be eating. And just now they're starting to really realize how much all of these hormones play into us losing weight, keeping bone density. All of this information is so important to you. Your results are delivered online quickly and discreetly, and you get all of this information without a doctor's visit. So prioritize your health and visit questhealth.com today. Use the code WALK-INS to get 25% off and find answers to the multitude of health questions you may have. That's questhealth.com and use the code WALK-INS for 25% off. Yeah, it's funny to me because I look at you and I'm like, when you talk about the abuse you take online, why do you still do it? Was there ever kind of like a dark night of the soul for you when you really were like, I can't do this anymore and I'm not?
The height of the View, I was like, I just can't do any of this anymore. I was like, I can't live in New York anymore. I can't work with these kinds of people anymore. I don't even know if I want to do this anymore. I felt like I was really losing myself in a lot of different ways because that entire show is hosted, produced, created, staffed, except for like two lighting guys, completely by progressive. I mean, like to this day, the most progressive left wing people I've ever met in my entire life. Like obscenely progressive to the point that the reason why you can live this kind of lifestyle because the only thing you ever do is go to and from ABC studios to the Hamptons and back. Like that's your whole life existence, and then you
Mhm.
spend $900 at Cinderella and dinner and everything's fine. I mean, I'm being hubristic a little bit, but that was ostensibly their lifestyle. And at the height of it, when it was just like again like the parodies, the blah, I felt like I was just really trying to do my job there and represent women like me. And the show was doing incredibly well, like critically and ratings wise. But I felt like the better it did, the worse treatment I got, like in the studio and then out in the world. And there was just a certain point that I was just like, nothing is worth how I feel every day.
Mm.
And I don't feel bad for myself. Like if I couldn't handle like my life and talking and speaking for money and being a political commentator, I wouldn't do it.
Mhm.
I'm really at a point in my life that I really don't give a fuck what people think of me like at all. But I don't want, I don't know if you feel this way. I'm like very protective of some of these like baby commentators coming up, these like young girls. Like I do not want them to experience anything that I have. And I'm any part of it. I don't know if I can control that, but like I just interviewed Mary Margaret Olahan, who's the White House correspondent for the Daily Wire, and she's really smart and pretty and cool. And I was like, I hope to God no one ever puts the kind of bile on her that was done to me at a young age. And I don't feel bad, but like I think all women who came up in the 2000s, in media or not. Like there's definitely a different kind of treatment for us than there is now. You know what I mean? Like how fat, go ahead. Like one last thing, how fat I am was discussed by Keith Olbermann on his show, and he and Joel McHale, the comedian, ranked how hot I was. Like that
Oh,
was a
wow.
segment on a TV show. Like that just wouldn't happen now. And I'm sorry if I'm like filibustering. It's, telling my little
No.
tales to you, Bridget.
No, it's funny. I see all these memes that are like, I cannot imagine being a woman in the 2000s. And it's always
I
just
know.
they'll talk, and I don't think I even realized it because I was just awash in it. But they're like those memes and reels that go around where it's like this was considered morbidly obese in like
I know. And
2000
it's
or
like
something.
Jessica
It's like,
Simpson, like one of the most gorgeous women ever. I know. It's like
it's
horrible.
crazy. It's crazy.
Horrible.
Or like Britney Spears when she was getting called fat was like a normal size. It is, yeah. There was something recently on Twitter going around that it was a viral tweet where it was like I would have killed myself if I had been a woman in the 2000s. And I guess maybe it did. It's funny, I just was like I've been like purging in my garage and purging baby stuff and whatever, and, I found all these my dad made us like little, photo books every year for Christmas, that was his thing, and they were all from 2001, 2000, and I'm like, and maybe this is just everyone, but I was like, "Oh my god, I thought I was fat at that like, in that time," and it was the early 2000s, but I also came from, like I mean, my grandmother was very mu I think that, like, the fat shaming was also just, like, in our family. My grandmother was very old school, like, almost, like, weighed herself every day, made sure that she was never photographed pregnant, just
Oh,
greatest generation.
cultural. Like I think that was
Yeah.
just something that was like bashed into their brain. And it's really incredible. Like any of us are like alive without eating disorders and like living in any way because it's a pretty toxic time for so many women for so many decades.
Yeah, and
Just have
you were in the pu I just can't imagine being having to be forced to be so public. That is that I just don't know what that's like. I don't know what that does to you as a young, developing brain to be you didn't choose to be in the family you're in, and now this is why I do think that when people are like, "Yeah, you don't get to, like, make fun of politicians' kids, they didn't choose this."
Well, I make an exception for Hunter, whatever that's worth. I think people can make fun of him all day long. I think for
He's an
me,
adult now, though.
he's almost 60, so whatever. But
He's
people
not
are
a
like
child.
the amount of people that were like, he's been through a lot, and you should have compassion for him. And I was like, there is a certain point where you have autonomy over your decisions and your life choices, and like bad stuff's happened to everybody. That doesn't mean that you steal
That
and
might
like
have been fair in your teens, but this is a
no,
grown man. I don't
no.
fit no. I mean, when I say children, like, when you're a kid, even I'll stretch it even to your early teens and maybe early 20s. That's pushing it, though, because at a certain point, you're making decisions on your own. I mean, you didn't have to become a public figure after you were a like, a child and grew up, like you said. I think you're good at taking responsibility for the fact that you're still doing this and don't have to and choose to.
When I was growing up, my parents made it really fun. Like, I always
Yeah.
thought politics was, like, so fun, and it was a really different time. Like, journalists were much cooler, really believed in the concept of off the record. There was just, like, a lot more collegiality, I think, even with candidates. So, I came up in, like, a golden era, and my dad was considered very cool for a very long time because he almost beat President Bush in 2000 when he ran for president the first time, and that's when, like, people started calling him the Maverick, and, like, he hosted Saturday Night Live, and so he was, like, a beloved figure in a different way. So I didn't experience this, like, ugliness until I left college and he ran for president the second time, and that's when it, like, got a little intense, but even then, like, I was just, like, having fun and supporting him, and then after he lost, I was like, "I have to get a job, and the only thing I know how to do is talk about this kinda thing." That's, like, my
Mhm.
only skill set. And then it kind of like just went from there. And, it's funny, like if I could get in a time machine, like I don't know if I would do this over again, but I feel very grateful and very blessed and very privileged because there's so many people I know, I'm sure you do too, that don't have the opportunities a Nepo baby does, that don't have the security, of being a Nepo baby that I did. And it's not like, when I was 23 and it didn't work out, my parents were gonna like let me be homeless. And I just know so many people who are such incredible writers and such incredible hosts that really had to grind a lot harder than I did in the beginning. So I really try not to bitch about things as much as possible because it's pointless. And and this is fun. I mean, it's fun to like talk to people like you, and I meet them. I'm sure you do. Like, I meet the best people and the smartest people, and like, especially with the women in this industry and the anti-woke, center right, whatever category we're in. Like, they're the coolest chicks. Like, I just find the coolest women, like this affinity and this sisterhood that I don't know you that well, but like you're certainly included in, and I just love an anti-woke, strong, independent woman who like doesn't bend the knee to anything. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's been why do you feel compelled to still do this stuff in those moments when you say I maybe wouldn't have done that if I could go back in a time machine? Why would you feel that way, and what else would you do, if anything?
The time machine is just because the media's landscape's changed so much that it was, again, like I think a lot more respectful, there's real like, it's very intense. Like whenever I don't know, I'm sure people ask you advice, like if you want to get into this, whatever. And it's like, there are certain things that I know, like X plus Y equals Z. Like I know how I can get 100 million views on this, like, video right now for us. And I can like start saying things that are anti-Semitic. I can start saying like, my husband, like I should always just kowtow to him and women should never have the right to vote. Like there are things you can do that X plus Y equals Z that you can like explode in this industry. But I prefer to take every issue case by case and be more nuanced about it. And it's just like, it's not going to get you the giant contract and all the views and whatever. But I say that, but then again, like I don't really know what I would have done instead of this. And then I'm sorry, what was your second question?
Oh, just why do you feel the way? Is it just the landscape is so different that with the knowledge you have now going back, you'd be like, don't do it. I mean, you get a lot of earned media, though, I will say. People kind of hang on whatever it is you say, it seems like. I saw something in People about just a couple days ago come through my feed that they were talking about what you were saying. And maybe it was about Meghan Markle or something. I don't know. I was like, all the Megans talking about the Megans.
Yeah. Megan Kelly had a good segment on that as well. I mean, maybe I wouldn't undo it. I say that it's just not, I mean, life's never what you think it's going to be, but just meaner. Like this industry is just it's much more mean than that's why I think I feel so protective of some of the people coming up, but I still do it because I've taken breaks before where I'm like, like after I left the View, I was like, I'm getting out of the industry. I'm going to like, focus on something else. I'm just going to like do political consulting and whatever. And then something will happen in the news and I'm like, I need to talk. I need to rant about this. I remember I took a little break. It wasn't a big break, but I took like a little break in the summer when Biden did had his horrible debate. And that's part of the reason I ended up connecting with Two-Way, because I was like messaging Mark Halper and I was like, I need to talk about this with people. I need to talk about how scary this is. We have our president's brains mashed potatoes. I need to talk to you. So, and I find catharsis in sharing and, meeting people and like, I don't know, because I'm also, I'm a ham. I love a camera too. So,
it's your
long.
Yeah. It's funny. I've said that. Like, I'm like, I just want enough money to like not have to ever tweet again. And it's like, Bridget, you would be Elon Musk. If you had $1 billion, you would still be running your mouth on Twitter. Like, what are you talking about?
I think you'd definitely still be tweeting. And I think you'd probably do this, just maybe in like a different studio. I don't know.
I mean, that's all I want. When people go, okay, what's your 5-year plan? I'm like, I really just want to glow up. That's it. I'm pretty much doing everything. When I'm living 100% living the life of my dreams. And I was one of those people who had to like wait tables and have side gigs and go work on weed farms or like whatever to try and keep going forward. But when I and there's so many things that I'm doing that I never would have guessed that I'd be doing because they didn't even exist when I was conceiving of being a creative. And I was on Will Kane's show actually this week, and he was like, how many shows do I have to plug before I get to your name?
That's
I was
you
like,
do
there's
have
probably
like a
more
lot of
coming.
content. You do have a lot of content. I mean, it's really impressive the amount of work you do.
I've had a lot of people who are much wealthier and much smarter than me tell me that I need to focus on one thing. And I did not become a creative to do that. Like that might work. It's probably really good advice. And it probably works for people who are a little bit more military about their just more like athletic about the way they treat their life and job, usually men. My husband's another one who's like, if you look at his side of our bedroom, it looks like I live with someone in the army, and my side looks like a teenager lives there. Like there's like clothes on the floor. My nightstand, no matter what I do, always just looks, I don't know how he gets his to look so neat
They have
and
less shit
orderly.
to do. They like need less things. Men don't need the kind of stuff.
No, I have no excuse. And he so I think there's just like a bit of an ADD quality that I probably have, and I have so many ideas. I mean, people are like, "Oh, you're doing so much." I'm like, "Yeah, and I'd be doing 3 times this if I had resources and teams and money." Like there's shows I want to make. There's another podcast I want to do. I would be doing so much more. There's an empire of content within me, and I am only limited by how many people I have working on it. And having like my partner for all of things creative, my cousin Maggie, she really like reins me in. Her basic rule is like, okay, let's get this going, let's get that plate spinning, then we will decide if we can add. And so she's always kind of holding me back from being like, I want, but I'm also the one that will be like, I know when to strike if the iron's hot on something, and I think sometimes you just have to take that leap and make it work. But
What
yeah,
is
I
your
like
dream, like
my
podcast gig? Like if someone just said, here's, $40 million, like what is your dream you would want to create?
I would want to do everything I'm doing, and I would just want a better studio, better lighting. Like I would want someone who could do
Hair and
my
makeup
makeup.
every day. Yeah.
Yeah, I just would want help, and I'd want a team that could put clips out so that they were more in the news cycle. We're always slightly behind it.
Mhm.
Like just better camera. I really don't want, and then I would want to make my fiction. I write fiction too, and I wrote, because before I ever did any of this, I wanted to write and like television shows. So I have all these ideas for television shows, scripts that I've written, worlds I've created with Maggie, and I would go make those. Like if someone gave me $40 million, and I would make my greeting cards, which was the original idea for all of this, which was for dysfunctional families. So I would just do this better, and I would do a lot of the like scripted stuff that I want to do. I have like an idea for an animated short that I want to make, and I have or actually 2 animated shorts. And yeah, so I like being creative. This is what I was saying to Will. I'm like, we have no, like, this is crazy to me that there are no gatekeepers. That we
Yeah.
just can like anyone can do this, and they can start a podcast, and it might not be great and it might not be perfect, and you're going to learn a lot of lessons along the way, but you don't need that much money to get going. We started Walk-Ins Welcome with 1 board and 2 mics, and it was audio only. And it's like and people have told me to give up on it, and they've told me to shutter it because it doesn't get as many views, because it doesn't get as many views as Dumpster Fire on YouTube. It gets downloads, but it doesn't get because we started it as an audio.
Mhm.
But people are like, why don't you shutter that? And it's like just focus on one thing. We're confused. I get this note from different platforms that I host all of my content on. They're like, you have too many things. It's too confusing to your audience.
Is anybody saying that to Bill Maher though? Because he has a podcast and a show,
Oh,
and I don't think there's anything wrong with, you know, being ambidextrous and having different platforms. Like, I think that's a very linear way of thinking.
also, not everything is for everyone. So some people really love walk-ins welcome and dumpster fire just isn't their thing, which is fine. And some people really love my writing and don't like any of the other stuff that I'm doing, and that's fine. When you talk to like all the women in your audience, did they come from were they your audience before The View, or was it primarily from The View that you captured this whole female audience?
I think it was women have always sort of like I'm not a guy's girl. Like I'm not like
Mm,
a cool kid. Like bro podcasters don't like me. Like I don't like tend to get asked to go on like even like male panels that often. And I think it's because I'm not skinny. And when I was very young, I think there were a lot of women that saw like, oh, like I look like Megan. Like I'm not skinny either. Like I always say like I look like every other like woman from Phoenix. Like I'm not like I'm a very like all American average girl woman when I'm
mhm.
40. And so I think that happened. And then I think on The View, the View audience is like same thing. It's like 85%, if not more. I mean, it might be like 100% female. And I just don't think like it's actually something like I wish I could work on because I don't really understand why men don't like my work. Like it's incredible I even got married to a man. Like there was that one man that was interested enough in what I had to say to marry me because like I don't know what it is, but and sometimes I find like I'm not very like quippy. I'm not a comedian. Like I'm not like sometimes like men will say things to me and I'm like, I don't know if you're joking or not. And like I
Mm.
don't know. So I don't know, but I'm trying to work on it. I do have gay men, pretty significant gay male. What's left of like the straight or the men are gay. So, I'm happy for that. So grateful for that audience.
What do you think is most pressing for your female audience from what you can tell?
Oh my gosh, culture war stuff is huge still.
Really?
The economy. Yeah, because there's a lot of moms that were like, like told that schools are no better than you when it comes to anything from gender stuff to what they're going to teach you, and we're going to lock your kids down forever. The economy. I think there's just like a feeling like that Democrats have completely lost the plot. And if you think about it, there aren't a lot of people, I would say like men or women on the left that are relatable at all. Like I saw this morning that Mayor Pete said he isn't going to run for Senate, and there's a feeling he's going to run for president in 2028. And I was just like, who is pushing Mayor Pete, who got 0% of the black vote? Zero when he ran for president. Now, I've never run for president, Bridget, and you haven't either. I sure as fuck think I'd get more than zero. Zero? Like, and I just am like, I don't understand why Democrats are so weird. They're
Yeah,
weird. So I think that's
yeah.
part of it too, is like I'm many things, but I don't think I'm like weird like that. I don't think you're weird like that. Like we're not, and you can't like, I don't know. And not to like shit on Mayor Pete, and other people like him, but the idea that he's going to be like the thing that saves the Democrats from this is hilarious.
No, we were talking about Gavin actually today on dumpster fire because I was like, do not underestimate that man. I know people will say like America doesn't have the taste for him and blah blah. I'm like, it doesn't matter. If in 4 years the economy hasn't like if 4 years nothing's really better, there are a lot of people and he can figure out how to moderate in 4 years, which that guy I've seen his podcast is savvy enough to do. He is a psychopath who knows how to
He's a psychopath.
he knows how to survive. The guy is a
Yeah,
psychopath, and he has incredibly well-honed political survival instincts. He is podcasting surrounded by a burning rubble.
I know. I know. I don't understand why his constituents aren't pissed
They
because your
don't
city
care.
just burned down and you're doing interviews with, Charlie Kirk and Michael Savage and Steve Bannon. But Charlie Kirk wrote this whole article about like same thing, like underestimate him at your peril.
No,
Um, but I
do not.
just like I would pick almost any. I can't right now. There's no one I can come up with. Maybe they exist, but like I would literally probably roll the dice with AOC over Gavin Newsom because Gavin Newsom would let America burn to the ground and be like, "Oh, sorry, like I'm got to go to the French Laundry." Like I think he's out of his fucking mind. Like I think he's a crazy person,
Yeah.
and I don't buy it. But you and I are like paying very close attention, and there's people that they can't because they're working and they have to
No.
living and have to pay for their kids and stuff. And if he can manipulate himself so much, like I mean, I really fear that. I don't know about you, but I fear him.
Oh, I joke all the time that if he ends up being the primary candidate for 2028, which I think he will, I will have to
Oh,
become
you
like
think
an
he will?
activist and be knocking on doors. Like, you cannot let this man.
I'll
Like,
join you. I'll join you.
we were joking today on Dumpster Fire. I'm like, not satisfied with destroying California. Gavin Newsom has set his sights on America.
No, it's like his state is a sewer. I went to LA for work like a year ago, little less than a year ago, and I'm not just saying it's semi-conservative and whatever, but like the state of Los Angeles,
It's so bad.
it is not hubristic to be like it is like a third world country. It
No.
is so disheartening and so sad. I used to live in LA. Like what he has done and allowed. And by the way, the poor people of Los Angeles who have been psychologically manipulated and gaslit into thinking that this is how they should live when they're paying that amount of taxes. I think he would make an attempt to do that to America. I would really have to move to like a full blood red state district. I'm not a person that's gonna like leave America short of like, nuclear blast or something, God forbid. But like I would have to move where I'm living now because I'm in Virginia, which is like a swing state. And like I would be like, no, I need more safeguards in place. But I don't think the American public's that dumb. But Bridget, I'll join you. I'll give money. I'll knock doors. I'll do anything. Again, make AOC for president 2028. Like I will roll the dice with her versus him. I
AOC,
fucking
man.
hate Gavin Newsom. He scares the shit out of me. And
He's
he's
terrifying. He should be. He is terrifying. I
he's
was
a
saying this.
villain, like
I,
from a science fiction movie.
I was saying this on Twitter. I'm like, you cannot compete with that level of shamelessness, bottomless money, and serial killer charm. It is like
Serial
he's
killer charm.
dangerous.
But who likes him? There's somebody someplace. Like I don't understand why
He
people like
survived the recall in
him.
California
Yeah.
after the state was locked down and he went to the French Laundry.
I
He
just
has a podcast and his state just burned down and he decided to start a podcast.
that's so fucked up. I don't mean to laugh. It's like really awful, but it's like, what the hell? And like Californians, like, why are you like this? Like, if someone treats me like shit, I'm such a fighter. I'd be like, the hell you are. Like, I'm getting revenge, and
This
you
is
wronged me. And people in California are like, well, it's fine. Like, it's cool. He'll have a podcast. My city's in ashes, but
but
okay.
Trump. Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
but
this is
Trump, but Republicans, they're worse.
but the right. But the right. It
I
is
know
it
someone who would still vote for Karen Bass now. And I was like, I don't think we can continue talking politics anymore because
oh
I just
yeah.
can't. You would vote for Karen Bass again? Lady who was in
Yeah.
Ghana and then came back and was like, oh, the city burned down. Like, I don't get it. Other than I think a lot of Democrats are very like psychologically abused by their party and just don't, just
No,
like,
they have
it.
Stockholm syndrome.
Do.
Like this is like people who have Stockholm syndrome. They can't there's no I gave up on it. I think there were so many times where after 2020 I was like surely surely there will be a pivot to the like being more red and there was not at all. And I was like I got to get out. Like
They're like,
there's
charge me more, pay more taxes. I'll give you 80% of my money. It is. And people that live in LA, like I have friends who live in LA and I just think like I love them dearly and they're very nice people and they're good people, but I think something might be psychologically wrong with you.
they're
Continue.
freaking
Just like
literally
something's
La La
wrong.
Land.
Like
It is
I would
literally
never to pay that amount in taxes. Like the last time I was in LA, they were like, I was staying at a hotel and I was jet lagged. And I wanted to go get a coffee like up the street. And the concierge was like, I don't know about you walk in alone. And I was like, just like one block up in West Hollywood. Like this is, want me to get raped and murdered? Like, okay. Like it just, I don't get it at all. Sorry. I know you used to
no.
live in LA.
I don't.
I know you used to, right?
Yeah, no, I left. I
And
mean,
like a lot
Austin's
famously left to Texas, right?
yeah, we're outside of Austin. We couldn't do Austin's a little bit like LA. It's like little LA in some ways. There's a
God.
lot of the same problems. I mean, especially like around 6th Street and the downtown area. It's still a very blue city with a lot of the blue problems. But it's not you can still get outside of it. You could not in California. You just couldn't get outside of the blue. Because it just was everywhere, just came from the top down there. And it was just I remember there were so many moments where I was like, well, this is it for me here. But I had a friend come visit and we were walking downtown. We were walking in Santa Monica and she was like, it reminds me of Brazil. I was like, "Okay, it's time to go," because there was just, like, poverty and homeless people in front of all of these very wealthy mansions. She's like, "Oh, this," she was like, "This smell, it reminds me of Brazil," and it was just, like,
One
urine
of
and garbage.
murder rate capitals of the planet, but okay, like, Brazil's not safe at all. The other thing that
No.
I find so, like, weird about people in LA too is, like, there's obviously, like, the most woke, most liberal people ever, but a lot of them are living in these, like, McMansions and, like, you know, whatever, the Hills or Brentwood or whatever, and it's like, it's fine as long as the people rotting on the street are I can't see it. Like, as long as I put a big enough whatever, like, trees around or whatever, and there's something I find so, like, Hunger Games about it.
Mm,
Like, we're fine in here as long as, like, the poor homeless people are someplace else, and, like, that's disgusting too. Like, you just
yeah.
don't like, I don't know, like, I didn't mean to turn this into the "Let's shit on LA" show, but, you know, it's easy to do.
It started feeling to have you ever been to Cape Town?
No, have you? But
Yes.
I know it's dangerous there too.
It's very dangerous, and it's lots of very wealthy people behind gates in a city with a lot of poverty and crime, and LA more and more started feeling a lot like Cape Town towards the end there. And every one of my neighbors who is very liberal built a literal wall around their house. I was like, I don't have the money to protect myself from this like you guys do. So I think a lot of people in LA, they can it's again, it's a little bit like Cape Town, beautiful environment, beautiful weather. If you have enough money, you can insulate yourself to a certain amount from it, from a lot of the problems. But also they just start to normalize stuff that is completely bonkers. I still have family there. I was there right before the fires for New Year's this past year, and I was walking with my family member. We went for a walk around Santa Monica and we were headed up Wilshire. And I was like, is it okay? Because Wilshire could be a little dodgy sometimes. And she was like, yeah, it's fine. And then there's a crazy person standing on the street with their back to us. And I see two security guards kind of walking our way. And my like hair stood up on the back of my neck. And I was like, oh, this guy seems crazy just from the way he was standing in the middle of the street. And we just kept walking, and the security guards were like, "Hey, move on, keep moving to the beach," to the guy, and then he starts yelling at them, yelling at us, and they were like, "We're just gonna escort you ladies because he's been screaming at women," and they're like, "Head towards the beach." I'm like, "So you're just gonna, like, relocate this clearly mentally deranged man to, like, go harass the women at the beach?" Because he wasn't a cop, and he's, like, screaming at them, he picks up a bottle, starts threatening them, we cross the street, and my family member was like, "Oh," I'm like, "Who are those guards that just came out of nowhere?"
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she said that the city was hiring, and I don't know if this is true, if it was the city or if it was private businesses, but someone's hiring private security to guard the 3rd Street Promenade. They're like, "The city's hiring private security guards for 3rd Street." I'm like, "Don't they have police?" Like,
Yeah.
what are you
Yeah.
living with? Like, this is the most insane thing I've ever heard, and you're just on a walk like this is totally normal. They're just
Your
like frogs in boiling water.
your friends that are still living there, what reasoning or family, what reasoning do they give for staying?
I mean, work, life, weather, always weather. You know, the weather here
That's
is
not
not.
good enough for me. Okay, like, there are full 4 seasons in Virginia, and it's, like, lovely to experience that, and,
Yeah,
like, I do not need to live in Peter Pan, Never Neverland where the weather never changes. Like, I always think it's a weird answer. Like, you
I
don't
don't
have to
know.
move to, like, Michigan. Like, there are lots of other places on in the
Yeah,
country.
I mean, I think it's just like I do remember when I would be living there and even things like the fires, those fires were very devastating. They were all around you and they couldn't avoid them. But I do remember when the news would be covering something like a fire and my family members would be like, "Are you okay?" And you're like, "I'm going to yoga. I don't even know what's going on." And I think there's a lot of that. There was
Yeah.
people were relocated to the Ritz-Carlton who lost everything, and it was like there was like a war vibe, you know? They were all hanging out and partying and having like their displaced from the at the Ritz from and I don't know, they just I think there is you just keep going no matter. I wonder how many people are going to leave like the Palisades. Like, I wonder how many people were on the fence. What percentage of people just don't rebuild or just sell their lot and say cash out? There were a lot of people who were waiting for their kids to go to college, people who wanted to leave, but were like, all right, if
I
your
think
kid
Adam
had a
was that way, right? That he I think he stays because his kids, I believe.
I think so too, and I think, it's tough. I get it. We left family behind. I mean, my mother-in-law lives there, and I left and came here and had a 1-year-old and no support and didn't really realize how much you need that support when you have babies, and
Totally.
it was isolating, but I also was like, I don't know how to make these decisions. Like, the objectively, I'm giving my daughter a better life just by getting her out of this environment for aside from social reasons. I just going for walks with her was terrifying. It suddenly was not just worrying about me. I'm like, what am I going to do if some crazy homeless person starts coming at me and now I have a newborn? You know how
Yeah.
it is. You're so raw when you're in that space and everything looks different and Mama Bear suddenly starts seeing the world like, I was in the car stuck under an overpass where all the homeless people were, and some guy was wielding a bat around next to me, and she was on that side of the car, and I was like, if this guy shatters her window, I am going to be in prison for homicide. Like,
Mhm.
vehicular homicide. What? And I felt so powerless, and I was like, I don't have to live like this. This
Yeah.
is a choice. I'm
Yeah.
choosing to live like this. And that was there were many moments like that that outnumbered the support we had from our family
Yeah.
that were legitimately terrifying. Just
Yeah.
no.
No one I know that hasn't been in LA. New York too, to a degree, although I don't find New York quite as bad as LA, at least just in my anecdotal experience. It's still bad, but I felt really unsafe in LA. And I'm not
Mhm.
like a daisy. I lived in New York for 16 years. I can handle
Mhm.
myself. But I felt really unsafe in LA in different areas. And New York, there's some spots of it, but I don't think it's quite as bad. But I was not riding the subway when I just went to New York. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Mm. Yeah, it does seem like a lot of it is subway oriented.
Yeah, I mean, those videos and things that go around on Twitter and Instagram are pretty crazy. I don't think I'd be comfortable riding the subway. I don't care if that makes me a pussy. I just don't need someone to masturbate on my leg trying to get down. You know what I mean?
That's that's why I stopped going to the beach though. It was crazy. It was crazy in LA during lockdowns. I mean, Venice was literally taken over and it just became full on encampments and it was really wild. It was very and it had started feeling pretty dystopian to me in 2017. And I
Okay.
think we're seeing this in a lot of American cities. So I do wonder if, pulling out of LA, San Francisco's even worse. I do wonder if it is just that America is in decline. And you generally see it in the
Maybe.
cities first.
It's certainly possible. I don't think I'm enough of an anthropologist to analyze that, but I do feel at least in my little bubble that I live in, there's a lot more of I feel the community would not put up with the same kind of shit that again for whatever reason I just don't understand this, and I need someone smarter than me to analyze this and explain it to me and do a TED talk on it or just make a speech. Why are liberals abused by their leaders and accept it? I
Mm.
just know that if there was a whatever, if crime started spiking in my neighborhood, there would be like starting with me, I would be at town halls being the fuck it is, let's do everything we can. And, if not, I know not everyone can leave cities. I know there's certain financial, limitations with certain people, which I certainly understand and respect. But I really hope America isn't in decline. It's a really interesting question. I think in some ways we really are, and I think in some ways we aren't. And the big way I say that we aren't is you travel to foreign countries, I've traveled to foreign countries, and America dominates everything,
Mhm.
culture,
Mhm.
entertainment, power politics, no shade, but I just like recently found out who the prime minister of the UK was. Granted, he was just like recently elected when he came here. And I have a friend who lives in the UK and she's like, it's so exciting he's there. And I was like, I don't really like, you guys give a lot more fucks about Trump than I give about you guys. Like, no offense.
Mm.
Like America dominates everything, everywhere. So that's my only like pushback, that like in so many ways we're still a superpower, but it's certainly a compelling argument that the cities are like the canary in the coal mine.
Yeah, I mean, but even when Rome was still a superpower and it was still expanding and fighting wars all over the place, its cities started declining. I think like you see the rot internally first before it loses its superpower stature.
Who is
I
the
would
new superpower if it's not us? Is it China?
I mean, the I guess, like, the theory that some people have posited to me is that it will be, more of a balanced superpower where you have, like, the Americas and then North and South America and, like, Asia, China, and kind of your Russia, I get like, the Russia, China, Americas. There would be some tripod, what do they call it? There's some term for it that I'm not smart enough to know. I don't know. I mean, this is also the theory of why, you know, zooming out, you would want Greenland and Canada to be a 51st state, and like you would need to have that shored up once we get into this
I love how Greenland was like, we're not mad at the idea. Like, did you see? They were like, "We're open to it." Like
are
that
you
made me
sure?
laugh. Yeah, there
Have you
was
been to LA?
I have not been to Greenland, but it was just making me laugh that they were like, "We're certainly open to the
I
concept."
know.
Or something. I was like, "Oh my god!" And Canada is like, I don't really want Canada. Like Canadians are so annoying. I just heard maybe this is not accurate, but I just heard that they have like 80 planes. That's it. Like in their whole military, there's like
Oh
80
wow.
or something, and it's like, why do we want that? Like Canadians are so annoying. No offense, I sound terrible, but like I'm sure there's some nice Canadians out there, but like I find like the Trudeau-iness of it all just very insufferable. So I'm like, do we want Canada?
What's your biggest criticism that you get from people? Is it that you're like I feel like I've seen, what is it? Are you a neocon? Do you get that a lot?
I mean, I used to up until I think me going so hard for my friend Tulsi Gabbard. That seems to have like
Mm.
dissipated some of it. And also like, they're just associating me with my dad's politics. And there's certainly some parts of me that are like very hawkish, but I don't think any millennial who watched me personally, my brothers go deploy like a billion times. That's an exaggeration. I think it's like 15 times, 10
That's
times,
still a
something I can't
lot.
remember. It's a lot. And the first time my brother Jimmy did it, he was 17 and I was 19. And it's just like my permeating, like coming into my, adulthood memories are like between my brother's deployments. Like, I don't think anyone can experience that and be like, you know what? I trust everybody in power to lead us into wars. So
Mhm.
I think like that's certainly always like, said to me, I'm not an isolationist. Like, I don't think like, America shouldn't play a role when like tyranny is happening. But I think again, everything is by like a case by case situation. I think it's just like Nepo baby, spoiled. Fat's a big one. I'm a big fat. I'm the 600-pound lady on TLC. Like that's everybody's favorite. It's just, I'm just so fat and disgusting. And it's funny because sometimes I think like the most radical thing I've ever done is just like not go on Ozempic. Cause like it doesn't bother me. It bothers a lot of other people. Like how I look I don't know what's wrong with me. Like there's something wrong with my brain, but like I'm not insecure and I don't feel like I'm this hideous ghoul. So like,
No.
no, I'm like, I don't know what everybody's fucking problem is. It's like everybody has to be anorexic or size 0 in order to be like accepted. And I don't know. I don't give a shit. And
What do
Ben
you
doesn't.
think about the whole Ozempic trend? It does seem like the, like, kind of skinniness of my, late 90s, the waifs came in, because I grew up with, like, the supermodels like Cindy Crawford and Elle Macpherson. They weren't, like, they were skinny, but they were pretty muscular, and then the waifs came along, and, I saw this, I think it was the documentary, did you watch that documentary about the supermodels, like Cindy and
Was it good?
it's I loved it because I grew up with them, but one of the things that really struck me was how the designers, the male designers, were getting insecure and jealous of how much attention the women were getting because they became celebrities in their own right. And then this was right when the USSR fell apart and all of the waifs came, and they were like these kind of nameless, faceless, skinny girls from Eastern Europe, and they started dominating the runways in the waif trend because they were just basically like racks, and they couldn't speak English, so they couldn't over like they couldn't be bigger stars than the clothes.
Wow.
I was like, "That's
Need to watch
crazy." It's crazy. But what do you think about that? So this Ozempic thing kind of reminds me of living through that weird trend where it was like these I never was insecure about, people are like, "Oh, you grew up with these supermodels and you'd be insecure." I'm like, they were amazing. They were so powerful, and they were creating their own empires. I was like, "This is crazy that you can do this and be a model and have like your own brand and empire."
Yeah.
And I never was looking at myself like I'm not good enough. I was like, wow, they seem like anything is possible. And then it shifted into like faceless, thin, just being
Yeah.
like super skinny.
There's some people that are obviously just naturally thin and beautiful, and that's wonderful. I think the thing I worry about is like I am the most big pharma questioning person. Like, I'm sort of a maha mom, like, at this point. Like, COVID really radicalized me in a lot of different ways when it comes to that. I'm not an anti-vaxxer, my children are vaccinated, but I definitely question, like, a magic shot that's gonna fix all my problems,
Mhm.
and for me, I'm just like, did we learn nothing in COVID? Like, these places and these companies have a financial incentive to keep you like on this shot. And I get that there's like people that really need it and have like, obese people that it has changed their lives and all these things. I just think the sad part for me is like, I do think we're like entering back into this like, what do they call it? Like heroin chic era.
Yeah.
Just like having girls. Like you and I both have daughters. Like it's
Yeah.
just, I don't want it for them.
Yeah.
And I thought we were kind of like making strides. And then you see like Lizzo, being like, I lost all this weight, and her like, music's all about like embrace, and not that, she's maybe unhealthy before, I don't know, but it's just interesting that even she, was like, if I can take this drug. The thing that pisses me off is
Did
like
she
people,
take Ozempic or did she work out?
I mean, I'm assuming Ozempic, but I don't think she has admitted it.
Mm.
But it's
This
even
is
like, Mindy Kaling being like, I've just been hiking. And it's like, I don't believe you. And again, it's fine, like
it's
whatever. I get
Pilates.
again, Hollywood's gotta be hard, but, like, I just don't believe you. Like, sorry, and that's my choice. Like, I just don't believe it. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a weird time.
Yeah.
I'm glad
I'm
I'm
not
40. I'm glad I'm older because, like, I'm just much less susceptible to I think it'd be very hard if you were, like, in your formative years.
Yeah. I remember when I learned in LA that my friends were getting Botox, like, in their early 20s. I was like, "What? Why? You don't even need it." But there was, like, the preventative thing, and I was like,
That's
"That's"
supposed to be, like, bullshit, though, and it's why, like, the Zers look older than us is because, like, they've been
uh,
like, this is a TikTok thing, so, fact check me, but, like, apparently they look so much older because they've been, like it's like the Kylie Jenner effect, like, they've been putting injections in their face. You don't need it when you're in your I don't think people need it ever, but, like, in your 20s and stuff, and, I just, like I have a I'm not gonna say who because I don't want her to be upset, but someone I'm related to who's young, and she was getting Botox at, like, 26, and I was like, "You're out of your mind. You're
yeah.
so gorgeous," and also there's gotta be, like, I don't know. Again, it's like poison in your face. Like, I don't know.
Do you spend a lot of time on TikTok?
At night, I'll spend like 20 to 30. I know you're like against the China thing, but I get really good ideas for content off TikTok, and there's like trends. Like that lady who went to Pakistan, like looking for her husband. Did you see this? There's like this
No.
woman who went to Pakistan. Oh my god, you have to Google it. And she was doing all these press conferences, like asking the country of Pakistan for money because she went there because she had like catfished a Pakistani guy and the family like fled the country. But like Pakistanis like really embraced her and they were like really kind to her. So it like ended up being kind of like a good PR for Pakistan. Anyway, I was obsessed with that story.
I really thought that story was going to end with, and then she got raped and murdered.
No, she did get like sent home, I believe. Like she had to go back to New York. But it was just like funny. She was doing all these like press conferences and like this does not sound funny. I'm not explaining it well, but just Google it later. And so like stuff like that off TikTok. But I deleted TikTok when it was gonna get banned, and then it's like it's not banned. So I don't know. But I know it's like bad for me, and they're probably spying on me on it.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I saw so many grown women. This was kind of surprising to me. And they were posting all these videos of them being in, part of it was like tongue in cheek and joking, where they'd be like in train spotting, like pain from detoxing off TikTok when it was down for like 12 hours. And I was like,
not
okay,
the
I get
best.
this from my like teen nephews and nieces and whatever, like the young kids. Okay, fine. But I'm like, you have children. Like,
No.
what are you doing? How are you? I mean, I understand like the dopamine addiction, and I think Elon knew this when he bought X. Everybody is hooked on it. It's like I've said this since I got hooked on it, and like really badly in 2013. It is. I know I'm sober. I know a drug when I see it. I like try and wean. I literally just figured out basically how to cook meth in my garage when I started Dumpster Fire. Like I gave myself an excuse to be on Twitter all the time. Like, well, I need it for Dumpster Fire.
Yeah.
So I figured
I
out
could
how to like monetize my addiction.
Well, I could get rid of TikTok and Instagram and everything very easily. If you're like, wipe that from your phone today, Megan, fine. Twitter would be a little harder. I like Twitter. I know it's like crazy and a mess and like insane, but there's so much news that breaks on there. And sometimes something happens like a Zoom dick, like the guy that masturbated, the CNN guy, Jeffrey Tubin.
Oh
He got
yeah.
caught masturbating on the Zoom, and like everybody's just talking about Zoom dick on Twitter for like a full 48 hours. And it's like that's the kind of stuff I like experiencing online.
Yeah.
Where you're like just troll the shit out of a pervert. Like, so I like Twitter, but I know it's addictive. I know it's bad for you, but Twitter went down yesterday or day before yesterday for like
2 days ago.
4 hours, and I was like, damn, I really look at Twitter a lot on my phone,
Yeah.
like between things. So that's the one, and it's not good for you. And I've tried to quit, X many times, and that's the one that, like I said, Instagram, everything else. Threads. I'm not on Threads, but like
I've
whatever.
given up Twitter for Lent multiple times in my life, and I've had to like write about it, but it does. I mean, it was funny. My friend texted me the funniest tweet. She was like, "Is X down for everyone or just the Jews?"
Oh God. Oh my God.
She's Jewish. She's like, I can't get on Twitter. But she was like, I have been so productive. It does make me question like why I'm spending time on there. And even my husband, he was like doing all this stuff around the house. I was like, oh, X is down.
Well, okay. In defense of X, I will say one thing. I had to get a mammogram and then a mass biopsy to my breast right before Christmas time. And the whole experience was horrible and petrifying. And if I need my brain not thinking about a mammogram, and I think literally when they were doing the procedure, I was like holding my phone looking, and like I was like, sometimes social media serves a benefit because your brain is in another sphere,
Yeah.
So I will say that I was so glad I had social media on my phone, and that I'm fine. It was benign, but
Okay, I was gonna ask that. I know you have to go. Where can we what's your biggest defect of character?
is that like what's the bad thing about me?
Yeah, like what do you struggle with? What's your biggest aside from a vice being like Twitter, I guess, but what's like I don't know. Mine is I'm very spiteful. One of many is like I'm very spiteful, and I will freaking hold on to if somebody slights me or whatever, I will hold on to it. I'm like revenge is it's not great. It's a bad defect of character, but I'll like hang on to it.
No, I think that's mine. People, I do not wish ill on people, but people who have fucked me over and hurt me and enjoyed hurting me, like I don't I don't wish bad things on them. I'm just like
You're dead to
entertained.
me.
I'm just entertained when karma comes around. Like, like I just a woman I used to work with who was not that nice, his husband has a big RICO case against him. Like, thought that was pretty interesting. The most unkind people. So it's like stuff like that. That's not a great quality. I should be a
No.
better Christian. It's not good at all. But I don't like, it's not like I'm like doing anything. It's just more when like bad things happen. I'm like, oh, like karma came back to you. So that's probably a bad part of me. I don't exercise nearly as much as I should. I can be very tunnel vision with like political things. Like when I have made a decision about how I feel, sometimes it's normally very hard to move me in a different direction. And I can make judgments about people. Like if you're someone who's like, I love trans men in sports, like I think a little less of your intelligence, and that's probably not a healthy nor kind thing to do. But I can be swayed. Like I'm also like, I have an attention span of a hamster. So like if something else happens, I can like just move on and find something else.
The
But
millennial in you. What is your biggest asset?
oh my gosh. I am the most loyal ride or die friend. Like I am the person you want in your zombie apocalypse fan. Like I am extremely loyal to the people I love. I would know how to keep secrets. I will never fuck people over that I love. I will really show up. I really know how to show up for people. And I think it's just because like in politics that's so rare. So I think that's it. And I think I'm a good mom. Like motherhood has been something we bonded over. It's been something I didn't really want, and then when it happened, I've been so happy I decided to do it because it's like the best part of my life by far.
Yep.
I love it.
I feel you. Every day is just it's the best part of my day.
Yeah.
Those sweet little faces.
And they're so excited to see you.
Yeah.
Every time.
So
So
cute.
excited to see you. Yes. So
Where can we find you?
you can find me on X. And then you can find me on Two Way, and that's just like on YouTube. If you go to the Two Way, it's literally the number 2 way. And then I have a podcast called Citizen McCain. And you can find me on Substack too, like everybody else. Do you have a Substack?
I do. I didn't know you had one.
I just launched one. I got talked into it by like the Substack people, and Substacks again, like the reason why I like X, because it's an audience that likes me. Like it's a place where I can cultivate an audience, and like Substack, it's like it's tricky and it's like very like intelligentsia, and I'm like trying to get used to doing Substack. It's been trickier than I thought.
I'll follow you. We do it. We like live in our own little world there. I feel like they're always like, they're part of the people who are like, you have too many tabs and things going on here. And like, nobody knows what to get from you. And I'm like, well, that's their problem. It's not great. As someone with a brand, it's not great to be like, that's not my problem. That's my audience's. But I've moved from a lot of like paywall situations yeah. This is now where everything is.
Like anything behind a paywall, just because like I don't know. Like
no, I get it. I get it.
I just am like whatever. In fact, like even when you have to like post and they're like click, I'm like, oh, why is paywall? Like people need to pay $8 to hear me.
Nepo baby, and I want more of your money.
Bullshit. But it feels a little weird. Like I don't know. There's something about it. Like I have like a very tiny amount of paid subscribers, and it's nice. I should do, but I was told I should do more paywall content like just for them. But I'm a really bad fucking business person. And I hate the onus that you have to be so good at business in order to do commentary, because I wouldn't ask a business person to do this. And like, I'm like, I don't have the brain for this. Like, I don't know what's the best platform. Like, I don't fucking know. So anyway,
I've got, I mean, that's like I could do, that's a whole conversation, but yeah, I like it. I like that they're always iterating and adding things. I'm like, you guys are out of control too, by the way. For somebody, they're telling me that I have like too many things. I'm like, you have chats, you have like notes, you have, now you're doing live video. Like you guys are all over the place.
The notes are supposed to be like Twitter, but it's like not like, I'm like, no one's engaging on here. Like I have like, if Substack came to me, I have feedback, because I actually don't find Substack that user friendly, like as a consumer and as a creator, I guess.
Yeah.
So
it's tough. All right. I know you got to go. I love you. Thank you so much for coming through. And I hope everyone watches your 2-way.
Thank you. And I'm so sorry I had to reschedule once. It's really, thank you for forgiving me.
Don't feel bad.
Again.
No.
And congratulations on all your stuff. It's so amazing. And you do such incredible work, and everybody loves you.
Oh, thank you. Not everybody.
Of you. Everybody has to work.
Not everybody.
The check-in with Bridget and cousin Maggie can now be found at PHETASY.com. It's been titled Another Round with Bridget Phetasy, and it's now in video.
This has been Walk-Ins Welcome with Bridget Phetasy. I'm Bridget Phetasy, and you're welcome. It's the dumbest line.